Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here at the famed Blue Note here in New York City. This week here at the Blue Note, GRP Records celebrated a milestone in music. They celebrated their 30th anniversary, and what way to celebrate is to have the founders of the label, Dave Grusin, as well as Larry Rosen, to bring and invite some of their special guests tonight, including guitarist Ritenour and vocalist Diane Schuur, as well as some very special friends. I sat down earlier with the founders of the label, and we talked about their mission and why they started GRP Records. We also talked about the cutting-edge technology that they brought forth to the recording industry in the late 1970s, which catapulted with the digital age and the compact disc in the early 80s. I also sat down and spoke with some of the alumni on GRP Records, including Ritenour, who's performing tonight, as well as jazz vocalist and Grammy Award-winning Diane Schuur. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the interviews and special performances of the 30th anniversary of GRP Records live here at the Blue Note here in New York City. Congratulations, 30 years in the making, and this week has been fantastic. What are your reflections now of the 30 years that you've contributed with your partner to the world of jazz and contemporary music?
I don't think they're any different now from what they've ever been. In other words, it's if you're involved in this kind of music, you don't have a lot of you don't make a lot of choices. You just have to do it. You know, something inside you makes you do it. So, and that's still going on. I mean, certainly the music business has changed, and a lot of areas of music have changed. But the thing that makes you go out and get involved with it and make these explorations and improvise and do all that stuff that we always love to do, that's still going on the same way.
You and Larry are pretty much kind of in the great annals of great record men. And when I think of GRP, I think of great people like Herb Alpert, Jerry Moss. I think of the Ertegun brothers.
Right.
I mean, what was your relationship like? I could tell that you were more of the musical as far as the contextual part of putting the music out there, and Larry was more on the business side of the whole label.
Well, more or less. Larry was always involved with the music, though, in addition to the business end of it. Whereas I don't know anything about business, so he had to multitask all the time. And But we had a great relationship. I don't think we ever had a serious argument about any issues, musical issues, or artist issues, or business issues. I think we trusted each other to think that each other's instincts were probably right on. If anybody felt strongly about something, that was probably the way we went.
You know, when I think about you and Mr. Rosen, the 70s were the great production sides, and I'm thinking of those lush arrangements with John Lucien and Angela Bofield, and then when we moved into the whole realm of GRP Records in 1982, 83, that's when you guys moved forward and letting your artists be who they wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I'm sure Larry has told you this story, but the fact is, before we went with Arista as a label, and in other words, the beginning of what we called GRP Records, we had Grusin Rosen Productions, and those were some of the artists you're talking about. We got started with before we had a record label. These kids, I mean, it was a phenomenal kind of I don't know what to call it. It's just the way things happened was scary in a way. We'd meet somebody, we'd meet an artist. They'd bring in one of their good friends who was an artist. I'm talking now about Dave Valentine, Angela Bofield, Tom Brown, Bernard Wright. You know, all of the relationship and all of these incredible 6 degrees of separation. You know, among all the kids of a certain age in that time. That's how we found all these people. We didn't go out. We weren't talent scouts. You know, they came to us because we had set up something that was comfortable for them to record, and the word got around to their friends and their friends' friends, and so we ended up with this amazing stable of young kids, you know, who, if they had been established artists, we couldn't afford them. You know what I mean? It was like, it was so symbiotic in those days because they needed a place to go. We needed kids to come in and make product and do sort of something in the same genre that we were interested in maintaining from a musical standpoint. So it was a miracle.
John, tell me the significance of GRP now at 30 years.
30 years, wow. Well, it's hard to calculate. There's so many records made and so many relationships were forged. And for me, it's pretty special because it was my first records that I ever made as a band leader. And I was playing with Chick, and Chick was really supportive and kept saying, man, you got all this music, you got to put a band together and you need to record. So he hooked me up with GRP. And for me, that was a huge deal, to get a chance to record, to have an outlet every year for all the stuff you were writing, and to sort of forge your own point of view and your own vision with the music. So I'll always be grateful to GRP for that. And also all the fun things we did together. There were a lot of group things that were more like broad with many of the players, like those all-star big band records and all kind of different combinations of people. So it was a long and great run.
What was Larry's and Dave's principle as far as recording music and letting you be who you are as an artist?
Well, I mean, I think it says a lot that they signed a bass player who was into playing jazz and writing and creating music that was, coming out of the tradition, but also going into some other areas too. And I had a lot of artistic freedom, so I can't complain. It was a blessing.
I guess your amalgamation with Dave and Larry go back to the baked potato in California.
Yeah, for sure. Dave Grusin and I met in the when I was 19 years old, and he was a film composer already very big in Los Angeles at that time, and I was starting my studio career, and we got to be musical partners, and he started using me for my films, his films, and at that point my studio career just kind of opened up because of him. And but there were other musicians involved at the time. We were all playing at the Baked Potato, the small club in L.A. that's still going on like it always has. And Harvey Mason was in there, one of the founding members of Foreplay. Anthony Jackson, great bass player from New York who had moved to L.A. Abraham Laboriel. Dave Grusin, his brother Don Grusin, Alex Acuna, Ernie Watts. We were all, very young at that point, just kind of forging out this new sound of West Coast fusion, so it was a very cool period. Dave and Larry were out in L.A., had formed their production company called GRP Records. That's Larry Rosen, so he's the R of Larry Rosen, even though a lot of people think I am. And and they were producing Angela Bofill and Earl Clue's first record, and Tom Brown, Funkin' for Jamaica.
You were on that record.
Yeah, and Funkin' for Jamaica is still getting sampled, and it is still kind of like up there as far as like legendary funk recordings, and a lot of people don't realize that Dave Grusin and a bunch of us were doing that track, so very cool. And that was a young Marcus Miller on that as well, so everybody from Jamaica Heights, so it was very cool. And that was really the beginnings of it, and Dave and Larry moved the company back here to New York, and things just took off. And I think a lot of general fans don't necessarily today know the GRP moniker, and now it's a bigger part of Universal and the Verve Music Group. But nonetheless, it a lot of historic recordings on that label, all the way from the sort of contemporary jazz, but also to Chick Corea and Michael Brecker and just on and on and on.
30 years in the making. GRP is celebrating the 30th anniversary, and this week at the Blue Note, you guys really kind of went all out. You had some of your all-stars and dear friends come out all week to support this.
It's totally exciting week. There's no question about that. I mean, it's one thing to think of starting this company back in 1982. Dave and I, two musicians, kind of getting together and decide to start a record company. It was like off the chart. You know, that was never the thing that was supposed to be successful. That's like kind of, they said it was, our advisor said, a formula for failure in business is having two musicians start a record company. So the fact that we defied the odds because we are 30 years later talking about it is, hey, something worked, you know?
You know, you guys, before GRP Records you started GRP Productions, which, you know, you guys work with Angela Bofield, you worked with John Lucien, and other artists, but you guys were dedicated record men before you guys got into this.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we're both musicians, obviously. I mean, Dave certainly has an amazing career as a musician. I really haven't played for years and years and years. But we started out together when we were working for Andy Williams. Dave was the pianist and the conductor. I was the drummer. And we lived on the road. You know, we became brothers. And then, you know, so musically, we were like at a place where during the intermissions, we're going back in our dressing room and listen to Miles and listen to Bird and listen to all the records, everything that was happening. And our thing was like, we wanted to make records. And when I met John Lucien here in New York and started recording him, and Dave was on the West Coast then, I sent him out some of the tracks, and I said, would you be interested in kind of writing the charts for this? And he said, yeah. And he came to New York, and we started working on John Lucien, which led to Earl Klugh, which led to Noel Pointer, which led to Patty Austin, which led to on and on and on.
You know, one of the things that I have a lot of respect. In fact, everyone who I've interviewed said that you guys really kind of elevated the recording game in 1979, 1980 with the whole digital advent. Tell me about how you guys were exposed to that, and what did you see in the digital vein moving forward musically?
You know, back in 1979, we read about a guy named Dr. Tom Stockham, who came up with a technology to take analog signals and store them digitally. You know, that was like a whole big move. And we said, we're going to test this out because we were striving for the best possible sound, the best technology, and everything that we do. So the music is one side of it, and that's really the most important thing. But the other thing is to deliver to music fans the best possible sound was what we were really trying to do at the same time. So we flew this guy in with this machine. He actually set up a business in Salt Lake City, Utah, brought in the machine, and the first record that we really tried this out on was Dave's Mountain Dance. So we recorded that. It was only a 2-track machine, so you had to record directly to 2 tracks. So I was engineering, so I had to mix the thing live as they were playing it. And when we heard the first playbacks, we went, whoa, that's happening. The sound was incredible. And that was the beginning of that. So we said, we're going to go ahead with our own company and call it GRP, the Digital Master Company, and we're going to store everything in the digital domain. And that was kind of a beginning of a movement.
And then also, too, another milestone, I'm showing my age. A couple of weeks ago, the compact disc just turned 30 years old, and GRP Records was also the first to indoctrinate compact disc into the musical vernacular and the technology.
Absolutely. It's interesting since we had these digital masters, which we started before there was a compact disc, we were actually making LPs and cassettes from these digital masters. Now here comes the advent of the compact disc. When we saw that, we said, wow, we have the digital masters here already for this. So we started manufacturing the CDs, but there were no CD manufacturing plants in America. We had to send our digital masters to Japan, and we'd order 5,000 CDs. They'd send them back here, and we had orders for 10,000 by the time that we got them back. We'd order 10,000, the next time we'd have orders for 20,000. We couldn't keep up with the demand because everybody who bought a CD player needed to have CDs. You couldn't play anything else on it. And the other companies weren't really addressing this because they looked at the compact disc as being like some kind of an audiophile product. They didn't look at it as being a mass-marketed product and had no sense that it was going to explode the entire music industry, that they could take all their old masters and reissue them all over again and sell them all over again as compact discs. That only happened as it went down the line. So it was like the Wild West when it first started.
Deedles, there's a lot of history in this building this evening, and you were very, very, very a part of the history of GRP Records. Mm-hmm. Tell me the first time that Larry Rosen saw you, and what was it like?
Well, he saw me when I was at the White House in 1982, and history was made then, and I signed a contract in '83, and we got together in the first trip that I made to New York. I flew by myself from Seattle, and I didn't have an assistant in those days, so I went to New York and went into their office, and he was telling me the story. He remembers, he told me tonight, you were in, you wanted to go to Harlem, and that's what he told me. And I said, oh, I remember that. So we drove in this town car to Harlem, and I said, hey, open the window. And I kind of yelled out, hi, everybody, and he couldn't believe it, and that was one of the first times, and so, but it's really been quite wonderful with the company. A lot of wonderful memories, for sure. So,
Deeds, you made some groundbreaking records with GRP, and part of the mystique of the label was they were on the cutting edge of digital technology and the sound in the CDs.
That's what I had to mention that tonight, about they were the first company to really incorporate CDs into our culture. And then all of the rest of the companies followed suit. So it's really amazing, I really feel blessed to have been a part of all of that, really, seriously.
30 years, and some of your records, all of your records, still stand the test of time. Is there a favorite record that you recorded on GRP?
Boy, that's like comparing, like apples and oranges. I can, if I may name just a couple that really stand out, if it can be more than one. Of course, the first album, Deedles, was very special because I was able to sing Amazing Grace on the last track. And, of course, Stan Getz was on that record. And Sure Thing was really a lot of fun. And the Blues for Sure is so special because and Love Walked In, those two, because I had just gotten married and all of that, and I was in the flush of being a new bride and all of this, and just they're all very special. I mean, it's just each album just incorporates a different facet of my life and existence. It's really amazing.
From too much talk to silent touches, sweet touches, we turned our hearts to love and tried it. First time
Name me 3 artists of the 30 years on GRP that you really had the honor and privilege of just working with and getting their music and their vision out to the world.
Well, I think limiting it to 3 doesn't isn't the easiest thing to do. I think Dave Valentin would be way up there. He was such a unique voice. He had such an amazing sound, an amazing concept, and he had culturally, he came from a Latin American background, Puerto Rican background in terms of his family, but he had this kind of sound that he made on the flute. Nobody else was making that sound, and he translated it to play that kind of Latin music, in a way that nobody else was doing it. Another one was Kenny Kirkland, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but just the most amazing, inventive piano player, and just one of the people that I thought was going to end up being the guy, and I think he would have been if he had stayed around with us. But and then there's so many people, Eric Marienthal, Eddie Daniels, there's incredible array of talent. And our buddy in the other room right now, Lee Ritenour, just phenomenal kind of special, unique voices. I remember somebody came and said, some manager came in and said, we got a great guitar player for you guys. I said, who's that? He said, well, you don't know him, he hasn't done anything, but he sounds exactly like George Benson. And we looked at each other and said, that's not for us, man. George is George, and we don't want to sound alike. We want somebody that's going to do their own thing and sound their own way and so forth. So that's the legacy that I'm most proud of. I think everybody that came aboard really had their own direction and knew what they wanted to do. And if we were smart enough to figure out how to help them do it, that was our gig.
Are you happy with the direction that you guys left when you left the record industry? I mean, are you guys happy with what you guys have accomplished?
Very happy with what we accomplished. There's no question about it, because I think, history has moments in time, right? So there was an opportunity for Dave and I to work together to grow young artists, to be there at the changing of technology and taking advantage of that, and then building it into a brand and building a brand and reissuing a lot of great jazz that we grew up listening to, and then having some major artists. So it's very fulfilling. There's no question about that. So I feel very happy about that. Is that the end for me? No. I mean, I don't see like retirement or something like that. So that was the end of an era in a certain way. And I'm now doing this, as we discussed a little while ago. I produced for PBS this series called Legends of Jazz with Ramsey Lewis. That's television. That's completely, it's different than running a record company, which I love too, because I think audio-visual is really where this whole thing is. People... It's great to ride in your car and listen to music and to put on some headphones and listen to music, but the visual thing adds a whole other component to it. And I started a series called Jazz Roots. We're celebrating the 5th year. It started in Miami at a performing arts center. Then I went to Dallas, then Indianapolis. I do it now in Las Vegas, in Atlanta, Georgia, in New Jersey at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. 2,000 seaters doing big jazz concerts with all kinds of artists. And I have 2,000 seats, over 2,000 seats sold for every single show. And I love the fact that people come in and I'm exposing them to this music. I have education programs for school systems that are connected to all this. I'm working with Quincy Jones and Phil Ramone on the history of recorded music, or the whole history of American music. And I'm working with BAM in Brooklyn about putting that into an education program for the whole New York City school system to teach history through music. So I'm more excited today than I ever was before. That's how turned on I am about where I think technology is taking this world. So when people say, well, the music business is not like it used to be, you're not looking at the whole picture. Because the whole picture is, if there are artists who are creating great stuff, and there's an audience who wants to get it. The only thing that's changing is the middleman. And that's the technology, it's the way something is distributed. And as long as those two ends are working, which they are, and they're happening probably more now than ever before, you as an entrepreneur or you as some kind of a creative thinker have to think about, how do I get that stuff across to people? How do I get that artist's discoveries and music and creativity to the people who want to hear it? And whoever puts those pieces together properly, creates the next GRP. It's not the same way. It's in a different universe at this point.
Did you have to bend down? I don't want to block anybody.
Yeah, bend down.
All right.
No.
Tape from the waist up there.
Lee's over there.
Lee is hiding.
Stand in the chair.
Will, get in there, Will.
Lee, stand in the chair. We're coming over
Hey,
here.
okay, yeah, right. You got everything, girl. All right. All right.
You're getting lost. Lee. Come scoot.
Tell me the first time you met both of these guys.
First met Dave around 1959. I was rather young, and he was making an album, and he let me engineer, which, because of him, and I met Larry later when they formed GRP. And I followed Dave's career because he went out and worked with Andy Williams, and, Quincy Jones and I became like the closest friends you could become in the city of New York. And, I think we were all, in that time, believed in what we do. And it's never stopped musically. Larry and Dave they're leaders of what we want to be when you want to be that. And whatever age you are, I think that's why you see this whole outpouring of love here tonight.
When they formed GRP Productions, which evolved into GRP Records, did you ever in a million years think that they would have the cadre of artists that they produced and even groomed over the 30 years?
In the beginning, they were a client of A&R Recording where I worked. And we just thought of them as a cool jazz label. Smooth jazz, particularly, was the first coming of something I wasn't sure was going to work. But the loyalty between the kind of creativity, I did stuff with Beatles and B.B. King and great artists that were guests or became stars on the label. And it was probably the best lesson you ever learned, is the care and love. Never stop a session and say, that's not going to work, it's not going to be a single. Never said that. It's a very important point. Because when you're young, you're experimenting and you're feeling. And now that I'm older, I still feel the same way.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here at the Blue Note. I'd like to personally congratulate Mr. Rosen and Mr. Grusin on 30 years of fantastic innovations as well as contributions to jazz music and contemporary music, as well as some of the special guests that took part of this event this week, including Diane Schuur as well as Lee Ritenour. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.
I can feel temptation.